Welcome to Riding the Trauma Train, or welcome back if we've shared this space before. I'm Lydia, your host and fellow passenger in this journey of self-healing, inner strength and personal growth. This podcast is a safe, judgment-free space dedicated to the realities of living with and healing from trauma. Through personal stories and in-depth conversations with special guests, including therapists, healers, practitioners, and fellow survivors, we look at what healing can truly look like in everyday life. We explore realistic healing journeys and share simple, sustainable practices and actionable tools to support your well-being along the way. So grab your ticket, take a seat, and remember you are not on this journey alone. Today, I'm joined by Kellie Fennell, a fitness coach and podcast host who has rebuilt her life with honesty, compassion, and powerful intention. She teaches what it truly means to choose yourself, to honor your non-negotiables, and to live from self-belief instead of survival. So grab your ticket, take a seat, and remember you are not alone in this journey. Kellie, I am so grateful to have you here today. Welcome to Riding the Trauma Train.
Thanks so much, Lydia. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I absolutely love what you're doing here, trying to spread awareness and connect with people to let them know that, the shit, I suppose, that we've been through in the past, we're not the only one who kind of has been through it, because when you're in a bad space, it can feel that way and you can feel like nobody understands. But when you start to open up, you start to see, other people have been through it and they've survived. It's a source of inspiration as well. And not only survived, but you can thrive after something like that. But it is about getting through the messy middle and working through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been watching your journey for quite a few years now, and there's been a few times that you've opened up completely and explained kind of where your trauma came from. So for those listeners that haven't met Kellie, can you just give us a bit of backstory, please?
Yeah, so I suppose my childhood growing up was very normal, nothing out of the ordinary. I have an incredible family. My parents are amazing people. So, again, did all of the things normal children do growing up. Got into a relationship when I was 19, and you know yourself, when you're young love, it was incredible. We were obsessed with each other. It was amazing. And then one day, out of the blue, my then partner Mark took his own life, and I was the one who found him in his bedroom. So, massive trauma. But to be honest with you, I didn't really realize that that had affected my life so much. And if I'm being very honest, only until maybe 2 years ago did I really face what happened. So I'd been suppressing that and I'd been avoiding that for like 17, 18 years. But there's only so long you can push these things down until they resurface. But yeah, that's what happened to me. And I suppose that's what I'm still trying to work through. I think this is for everyone. It's a work in
Yeah.
progress. And I don't think it ever ends, but you just get better. You just get further down the line.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think what I'm really not astonished, and if astonished is the right word, but you said his name then, which is I think very powerful. I know the episodes, or when you've spoken about it before, you've never said that, so that is really powerful. So one, I'm very proud of you, because that is a very big accomplishment to accomplishment's wrong word as well, but it's a brave thing to do. So that is like really amazing. And I think avoidance is so relatable to so many people, because we do avoid facing things. The trauma of losing someone and grief is bad enough, but to have been the person to have found him in that moment, and then kind of thinking that it's never going to that it didn't affect you, and kind of just moving through life. I want to talk a bit about that, because you were a very accomplished woman, and you have achieved so much through sport, through your businesses, and a lot of it, I know that it was from the beginning was avoiding those emotions. So can you explain to us how you kind of worked through that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you picked up on me mentioning his name actually, because I didn't mention his name for about 18 years of my life because I was completely and utterly avoiding. People can look back and think, okay, you could have worked through this sooner. You could have, dealt with it sooner and moved on. But to be honest with you, I think, that was my survival mechanism at the time and it allowed me to survive. I don't know what would have happened if things were different, So, yes, when it happened, I completely and utterly avoided. Now, I used different coping mechanisms to do that. I suppose the first one, these have changed throughout the years. And by the way, when I was in this, I didn't know this is what I was doing. It's only on reflection and having done so much self development work and healing and all of these things that I now realize it. So I think we can chat about it later, but I think awareness is the key to change because
Mhm.
you cannot change what you're not aware of. So when it happened, I was actually sitting my leaving cert, which is the final year in secondary school in Ireland. So I had gone into college then. That had happened in December, and I went into college then in the following September. And what I did was basically throw myself into the nightlife in college. Now I know, when you're going to college, you go out and so on, but I was known as, the party person. I was out every night of the week. I was drinking too much alcohol, but this was again a coping mechanism. I was basically numbing myself. I was numbing myself because I did not want to feel anything. I would do anything other than having to think about or feel, those emotions. So during the day, I threw myself into study. And that's why I think I got such good grades in college because I would go in and I would study and stick my head in a book and just get lost in it to avoid doing any of the other stuff, feeling what happened, talk about what happened, think about what happened. So that was during the day. And then at night, I was out, partying all the time. And as I said, drinking too much. Actually, it's just after popping into my head there. Back when I was in college, my mom sat me down and was like, Kelly, me and my dad are worried. We think like you have an alcohol problem. And to be honest, I didn't have an addiction to it, but I did have a problem in that I was using it as a plaster to try and cover, I suppose, what was going on beneath the surface. So that was my college years. After that, I met my now wife, who's amazing. But I met her and she was really big into rugby. So she was trying to get me to, give it a go. I gave it a go and I just became absolutely obsessed with sport from then on. Growing up as a kid, we live in the country, so we played a lot of Gaelic. We played loads of sport. That was the only really thing to do. So when I met Mo and I got into playing rugby, that whole love of sport came back. But what happened then was my addiction to going out to partying switched into sport. So again, it's a lesser of two evils. Like, isn't playing sport
Mhm.
better than drinking alcohol? But still, it was still a coping mechanism because I was using this thing as a way to avoid what happened. So I would become obsessed, with being the best, performing the best. I became the captain of the rugby team. I got our rugby team to All Ireland level. We were playing, competing at the top level in Ireland. And I was obsessed. Everything in my life was to do with this. And then after that, I got into MMA because I actually said to myself, I want to push myself even further. I want to go from a team sport to a single sport because if I win, it's all on me. If I fail, it's all on me. These are the mad things that I was telling
Mhm.
myself. After that, I went into Ironman events and I was competing Ironman worldwide because Ironman is a massive, massive thing. So it took so much of my time and energy to train for that, which I loved because wasn't that then an excuse to just, do the
Yeah.
thing, not do the other thing? And I suppose up until more recently, I had emergency spinal surgery in 2023. It was actually Valentine's Day 2023. And the ability to do crazy things sport wise was taken away from me. I couldn't even walk at the time.
Mm.
Unknowns to myself back then, but now I know I threw myself into work. I've done incredible things with work and in my business. So again, it's a lesser of evils. I was still using it as a coping mechanism to avoid. But it's only in the last year or two have I really, I suppose, accepted that I've been avoiding. and that I have to work on myself and that I have to, I suppose, face it and go through the shit, because
Mhm.
I've only through going through it have I realized that healing is bloody awful. It is horrendous. I had this moment of, okay, I know now that I've been avoiding, because all the way up until 2 years ago, I wasn't really aware that I was doing it because I was just in the rat race, go, 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 do, nervous system, up here, just
Yeah.
going through life. So I didn't even give myself time to think, well, what am I running from? Or why am I constantly, putting these pressures and demands on myself? And then I had that moment of realization, oh, I've been doing this because I've been running the last 18 years of my life, running away from this thing that I've never been willing to face. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to face it and I'm going to heal and I'm going to be amazing and this is going to be great. And then you're like, shit, this is so bloody awful and it's so bloody difficult. But it is necessary if you want to be able to, I suppose, live life from a place of authenticity and a place of not feeling the need to prove yourself or do,
Mhm.
do, do. I'm really focused now on being a human being and not a human doing, because for so many years of my life, my validation, my self worth came from the things that I was doing and the things that I was achieving. And again, only on reflection, I could piece this together. So basically, what I've now realized is when I was 19, Mark taking his own life, in my infantile brain, I look back and think, Jesus, I was only a kid, but we're so harsh on ourselves that we don't give ourselves that compassion. But I think back and think, I was only a kid, and I now realize that what my brain thought was he took his own life. I was not enough for him to stay. Therefore, I need to prove that I am enough. And everything I did, I had to be the best at. I had to be the best at rugby, MMA, Ironman. I taught, I was a teacher for 8 years. I had to be the best teacher in the school. I had to be the best at everything. And it was only trying to prove my worth. Basically, if people validated me, it would give me enough of a reason to validate myself or to accept myself.
You're not addicted to that substance, you're addicted to the feeling of not feeling. It kind of quietens your brain, doesn't it? Because you just think, well, like you said, 18 years is a long time to run from something when you're still achieving, because you're going through life and everything that you're doing is a validation, because people are saying, "Oh, well done, you've done this." Oh, well, if they think I've done that, well, that bit's done. I need to go on to the next thing. And I think you said you thought that Mark taking his life, you weren't good enough because he didn't keep himself here for you. And I know that other people have spoken about, when people do take their own lives, that it is an overwhelming feeling of they don't really think of anyone else. It's what they're going through. I don't know how exact that term is, but the other thing I think you've said is that when it was the next thing. So I'll feel good when, I'll be good when. And I think that is really powerful because there's so many of us that don't have that self-worth. And when you don't have that self-worth, you do look for external validation, no matter what it could be in, whether that is academically, body. I can't even think of anything actually off the top of my head, but it is external validation. When you kind of got to that point 2 years ago, 2 years ago is not very long in the grand scheme of it. How how did you face that initial kind of acknowledgement that that's what you were doing?
Well, to be honest with you, I was asked to speak about what happened to me and speak about how I overcame it and how I experienced grief. And I was just very honest with myself. And I just realized I haven't.
Mm.
It was mad. It was a mad feeling. It was like, people wanted me to talk about, suicide and the effects of it on people, who are left behind and all of these different things. And I honestly just felt like a bit of a fraud if I was to go on and speak about, healing and how I got through it and how, it shaped me and stuff when I actually hadn't done the work.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, it is time to do it. But honestly, as well, another massive thing for me is, so I have twin girls, right? They're four, and I want to be the best version of me for them. I truly believe that we are the blueprint for our kids' lives. And if I hadn't dealt with my own shit, and if things triggered me, and if I was acting a certain way because of what happened and wasn't living true to myself, and all of these characteristics. Another characteristic of me was I was very controlling, and what I mean by that is I had to know everything I was doing on a daily basis. And if something, changed, it would throw me off because I would have this feeling of lack of control. And that stemmed from me not having control back then. So I decided to do all of this work on myself because, the first thing I suppose was just awareness of that I hadn't done it before, but two, also just to help me stop a generational cycle, I suppose, of running. You know, like I'm quite an anxious person. And yeah, it's because of what happened, because I constantly run, constantly thinking about the future, all of these different things. And I could so easily pass that on to my kids. And I don't want to do that. My parents, I've already mentioned this, are incredible people. And they broke a lot of generational cycles in their own family. My mother's side in particular, a lot of family members would have really struggled with addiction. My mother has lost two of her brothers through addiction, like it's very bad. And she broke that cycle because of us. She moved from Dublin to Wicklow to give us a better life, to take us away from all of that. And I want to do that for my girls. I want to be the best role model for them. Like, I think becoming a parent completely and utterly changed me for the better, because what it did was it made me realize that, I am not, this might sound, I don't know, some sort of way, but I am not the most important person. I read before, explaining parenthood is like you wake up when you have kids and your heart is now on the outside of your chest. So you're trying to mind this and you're trying to do whatever you can to be a better person so that hopefully they will. Because a lot of my coaching actually talks about like the values you have, the beliefs you have, the habits, the patterns, all of these things that you have, you are going to pass them on to your kids. So your beliefs, your behaviors become your kids' beliefs and your behaviors. And I definitely didn't want to pass all of those beliefs and behaviors that weren't serving me onto the girls. So yeah, it was a massive moment of realization, and it was the start of this really difficult journey. And I think it's important for me to say that, like, I know I've already mentioned it, but when I decided, or when I wasn't even a decision, it was when the awareness hit me that shit, I haven't dealt with this. I need to do this work. When that first happened, I was like, okay, this is going to be great. It's going to be easy. I'm going to come out the other side and I'm going to be this amazing person. And it absolutely wasn't. And I think it's so important to realize that, because people might see me online and think, oh my God, doesn't she live an incredible life? Isn't it easy for her? And it's absolutely not. It is so difficult. So it doesn't matter who you are, where you live, what you do for a living. If you decide to face this and start down this road of healing, it's going to be fucking awful, but it gets
Mhm.
easier. Like anything, it gets easier.
Yeah, I think it is really important, because actually facing something is, like you say, it makes no difference which walk of life you come from. If you are somebody, you could think you've got it all together, but actually, in the back of your mind, you've got this trauma that's here that you're like, mm-mm, I don't want to open up that can of worms, because I don't need to face it, because everything else is going perfectly well. But actually, little things, and I've seen this in myself, like little things happen that you think, actually, like I could fly off the handle because something's happened, or it's like, that's not me. That is my trauma. I haven't faced that little bit. So I need to work through that. And really important that people know that actually it's going to be, it is a hardship. Like facing something that you haven't faced for a long time is it's not gonna be easy. It wasn't easy at the time, so why would it be easy when you decide to face the feelings that you kind of put in a box? Because that box has just been, like, developing for the last however many years. I think it's actually amazing that you've said that, because generational trauma, regardless of whether it's, I don't know, sexual, physical, emotional. There is a time that that people say it stops with me, and that's what you've done. Your girls, by the way, I can't believe they're four. In my head, they're still two. But yeah, so your girls will never see that. You have got to the point where you work through that in a positive way, regardless, and they get that side of you. They don't they get the healed version of you and the positive, authentic you, which will translate in their life. So when they move forward through the years that they go through,
Yeah.
because my girls are now 10 and 7, and there's just different things, but it's a beautiful thing to know that what you are doing is making their lives better, the next generation.
Yeah, and I also think as well, you said it there, like I pushed this down for 18 years. People might do it for 5, 10. People might do it for 20, 30 years. But I there is no getting away from it. I think that's the thing. You know, you can postpone this hardship for X amount of years, but it will come up at some point, and it will affect the way that you're living your life, even up until the moment that I suppose you deal with it. So you mentioned things there like you'll fly off the handle or you do this or that, these little triggers that, send us off on a spiral, they're all indicators that we haven't dealt with kind
Hmm.
of the past. And also, we might think that we just do things that aren't serving us for no reason, or we might think it's for, I don't know. So, for example, right, I work with so many people chatting about weight loss. Okay. That is my job. And I help them to get to a place of, food freedom and all of these different things. But a huge component of my job is making people realize that the food addiction or the poor relationship with food or whatever it is, it can be the alcohol addiction, the drug addiction, all of these different things. They are not the actual primary problem. They are a symptom of a problem. And we cannot go through life, addressing just the problem and thinking, okay, if I just am a little bit better, if I just use my willpower a little bit more, well, I'll finally lose weight for good or get off the alcohol or get off the drugs. That's never ever going to happen because you are addressing a symptom and you're not addressing the root problem. So many of my clients come through my coaching and realize, oh shit, that the food was just a symptom of what's going on. And for years and years, I've tried to address the symptom and I've tried to will myself or effort myself into results. And we
Mm.
never ever do that long term because you're avoiding the root problem. And when you actually realize that, like some people come, well, most people, let's be honest, come to my coaching thinking that it is going to be just another, coaching program where you get a nutrition plan and you get a training plan and you get results. And they leave being like, holy shit, I'm living a completely different life because I'm actually working on the root problem. And some people's root problems are different. Like we chatted about it, when we came on board. Like I look at my trauma as a thing. And when people tell me about theirs, I'm always like, holy shit, like theirs is way worse than me. And so I would just say, like, don't compare yourself to other people
Mhm.
because the lens through which we see the world is our lived experience. So somebody's, broken leg is as horrific to them as my trauma is to me because they're the only experiences we have to compare to. But once you start working on the root problem and even just asking yourself that question is huge because people aren't aware. Like people can be leaning on food, alcohol, drugs because of maybe a massive trauma happened when they were younger, or it could be simply work stress, chronic work stress right now. You're going to work every single day. Your boss is an arsehole. You're coming home miserable and you're drinking a bottle of wine in the evening or you're diving into a box of chocolates every evening. And you think the chocolate and the wine is the problem. That's not the problem.
Yeah.
It's the fucking arsehole of a boss that you're being faced with 8 hours a day for 5 hours a week. So yeah, I think it's realizing. So awareness, you mentioned the word awareness, and I love that word because awareness is the catalyst to change. You cannot change what you're not aware of. Awareness is the first step. Like for me, having that awareness, shit, I have been running the last 18 years. I haven't been dealing with this. I have been using alcohol, partying, exercise, work as a coping mechanism. And yes, I can go through the next 10 years of my life doing that and not facing it. But I think facing it in 10 years would be a lot worse than stopping and actually fucking facing it now, even though it's miserable and even though it's so difficult. Like I think the reason why maybe I've been successful online and stuff is because I actually am very vulnerable and very honest with my own experience. Like facing this has been so awful. Like I've been riddled with anxiety, woken up thinking, how am I going to get through today? Do you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's just because I'm an online coach who, whatever, has two global businesses, over 2 million followers, it doesn't make it any easier for me. But people might look at me and think, oh, hasn't she a great life? But no, absolutely not. I'm trying to get through the day like everybody else.
Yeah, and also I think it's really important to say that this is one of your quotes actually, is where you said people overnight success doesn't happen. It's like over 1,000 nights. Or it's something like that. And that literally that is what people see from like you. You are successful, and like I said to you when we when we started talking about, oh my gosh, totally girl fanning right now, girl fanning, fangirling, whatever it's called. But I think that when you do face something that is so deep, it is inside you. It's nothing to do with what is going on the outside. You could be a famous movie star. You could have all the money in the world. You could have the best friendships, family, everything. But if you have got a trauma that you need to face, it's on the inside. So none of that matters. And only you can face that. Only you can be the one to work through it. And now I know there are lots of people out there that have got um tools, which is why I've got doing this podcast, is so that people can find what works for them. But like you say, if you don't have that awareness that something that you are doing or not doing is happening, then you're not going to be able to change it at all. Once you have the awareness, you are the only one that can move forward with it, even
Yeah.
with assistance.
Yeah, and it's scary. So I get why people would like get the awareness and not do it. Like
Hmm.
if I was to like I think right, so I used to be a secondary school teacher and they can take complex things and break them down and present it in a way that we all can understand. And I think analogies for things like this makes it easier to understand because mental health, trauma, all these things are very difficult. And if you haven't exposed yourself to kind of all this stuff, then a lot of it doesn't make sense. But if you break it down and, um, you give examples, it makes it a lot easier to understand. So with my, weight loss clients, I say to them, so they come to me, right? This is just to explain the whole awareness piece, right? Because people are like, what are they talking about? Some people might be. A lot of my clients come to me and they don't actually understand how long-term weight loss occurs. They've been following these fad diets, they've been following methods and they've been outsourcing, I suppose, their results to somebody else. So
Hmm.
if I do this thing, I will be fixed or it will help me or whatever. And my coaching brings them through a process of understanding how long-term change happens in terms of your body and weight loss and fitness and health and stuff like that, empowering them to take control themselves, right? So they get to a point, right? And they go, okay, I totally understand why all of those things in the past haven't worked. I totally understand how weight loss occurs and they're aware of all of that. But that's only step one.
Hmm.
Now they need to take the second step, which is the most difficult one, which is taking action to get to where they want to be. And I totally get why people would get to a point of awareness and thinking, okay, I actually know what I need to do, but not doing it because it's so difficult. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? So I laugh with my clients and I'm like, you've got to the point of awareness now and understanding what you need to do. And now the fucking hard work begins because you actually have to do the thing. So I
absolutely.
totally so I totally get why people are like, oh shit, this is too hard to do. But you're kicking the can down the road. You're just postponing it till further down the line. And again, if I was to relate it to weight loss clients of mine, like I work with women up until their 70s, and a lot of my clients who are in their 70s who work with me and get to a point of realizing what they need to do for long-term success often say to me, like I get this on a weekly basis. They almost feel like they've wasted, 30,
Mm.
40, 50 years of their lives because they've been, looking at it from a weight loss point of view, they've been living their lives following these diets that haven't worked, repeating these cycles, these patterns, these habits, and they've been absolutely miserable. They've allowed their weight, how they look, the number on a scale to dictate their happiness. And they get to a point where they work with me, they have this moment of awareness and they do the work and they're like, Kelly, I've wasted 50 years of my life, you know? And that's what I'm saying right now. The best day to plant an oak tree is 50 years ago, but the next best day is the next best time is now. You know,
Mhm.
if you're not willing to face the work, whether it's we're talking about body composition, but whether we're talking about deeper stuff like trauma and all of the things that I suppose are running your life on underneath, if you're not willing to face them today, well, it's just going to get harder the more you push the can down the road. Like 18 years is how long I've been pushing this can down the road. And my God, it was hard to open up that kind of worms. But I'm glad I did. I'm in a much better position now, and I'll just be in a better position next year and the next year, as long as, you know, I have faced this thing and I'm not letting it control me anymore.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's funny that you say about weight loss because my 20 years of my trauma, what am I trying to say? So 20 years of my trauma kind of mask
Yeah.
was through food.
Okay.
I would eat my emotions, whether that be happy, sad, angry, anything, I would eat my emotions. And it took me a really long time to realize that I I was eating my emotions. And I think it's really important that, like that lady, like the ladies that are in their 60s and 70s, and they say, "Oh, I've wasted so." No, you've got another 20 years. And actually, through working with you, they will have those 20 years happy and fulfilled and acknowledging the fact that they can move forward in their life knowing that they feel good and healthy and fulfilled. I think it's really difficult, and it's difficult for me to think about weight loss in a way that is not related to my own trauma, because it was a safety blanket. Having extra weight on me was important because I didn't want external validation in a way that was really, really powerful. Whereas now I've I acknowledge the fact that that's what happened, but I am in a position where I really want to help other people with that mindset, if that makes sense. Because like what you do with your coach, I know it's not just about the weight. It is about the mind, the body, and the weight kind of comes off anyway because you're going through that fitness journey and you're going through the mindset and the eating and the habits and all those things come together. And like weight loss is like part and parcel of you facing things and moving forward with a decent coach is the only way I can say it. To have somebody that works on your mind as well as your body is powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Weight loss becomes a byproduct of you dealing with the shit, you know? But as I mentioned earlier, so many people think weight loss is a problem for them because, you know, of the food. So what they do is they try and restrict the food and they just end up doing this for years and years and it never works until, as I said, you address the root problem. We also mentioned there about, you know, clients in their 60s or 70s having felt like they've wasted years. And what you said is exactly what I say to my clients. I'm like, let's say you're 60 right now and you've had this realization and now you can live the rest of your life not being controlled by food and controlled by
Mhm.
the other. And I always say you're better off now than 20, 30 years down the line. And also for some people, they go through their whole lives never having realized this. So I'm really grateful that like in my early 30s, I had all of this. Yeah, I had these moments of realization and so on. And I am able, or were young when I was dealing with it. So I'm very grateful, but also it's never too late. As I said, like you can be 50, 60, 70. What's the alternative? I always say that to myself, you know, when we're going through shit, when we're having moments of realization where we're like, oh, you know, this is so difficult. It's like, what's the alternative? Living your life, you know, the way that you've been living it, being miserable for so long. What is the alternative? And for me, it's worth going through that messy middle and it's worth doing all of that work on myself to come out the other side. And I'm not going to say perfect or amazing, but come out the other side living a happy, bloody life, you know? You mentioned earlier as well, I lived so about postponing happiness, postponing dealing with this shit. I lived so many years of my life postponing my happiness until the next thing, until the next achievement. And a huge thing for me in life, and a huge part of my message is your happiness is not on the other side of achievement. Happiness is in the now, right? And I am not saying don't work towards goals, don't have things you want to achieve. I'm not saying that at all. It's amazing to have things that you want to achieve. But if you're postponing your happiness until you get to that thing or you achieve that thing, you're never going to be happy, because what happens is the bar shifts. So for so long, for me, it was like in college, it was like get the best grades. I got the best grades. Then it was get a great job. I got a great job. Then it was move up the ladder, get a promotion. I got a promotion. Then it was build a house, all of these things. And it was like, I'll be happy when. And when I got to the thing that I said would make me happy, I wasn't, because I wanted the next thing. And I think in the society we live in now, unfortunately, that's the story we're sold
Hmm.
by society, growth at all costs, be better, do better, be more, you know,
Hmm.
this all starts. It's fucking scary to think about it, but this all starts in school. What are you told in school? Get the top grades, be better, don't be the bottom of the class, be better than the person you're sitting beside.
Hmm.
Growth at all costs. And that's what I'm realizing, and that's why I've taken a step back and stuff like that. And I'm not, everything was like, what's next? Be the best of my career, do the best. No, I'm not doing that anymore, because, what was the cost for me? Well, my fucking sanity, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's today, be the best in your career, get more money, get more followers, all of these things. You have to ask yourself, what's the cost here? What's the hidden cost?
Hmm.
A lot of people, it's relationships. For people, it can be health. How many, of the top business people earning the most amazing money are going to die of a heart attack? Do you get what I mean? There's a cost to everything. There is a cost to doing the work, but there is also a cost of not doing the work. And
Hmm.
you need to decide what price you're willing to pay.
Yeah, I think is it they say this is hard. It's hard to do it. It's hard not to do it. Choose your hard. Like
Absolutely.
if you choose the hard where you're actually doing something and you're facing it, the outcome is going to be far better than sitting in the shit. So you're still
Absolutely.
going to sit in there. Um, a really random question, which is like it's taking it back a little bit. So I want to think like what you've just said with the whole I'll be happy when and when I achieve such and such, this will happen. Now, how did you go? Well, obviously you were studied neuroscience, then you became a teacher, then I think did you become head of year or head teacher?
I was in the talks for that just before I left teaching.
Yes, that's right. And then Kellie Fennell Fitness. So you've gone from self-achievement and trying, getting to fulfilling other people's dreams and mindset. How did the switch come on that you wanted to help others?
Right, I'll take you right back and the story of how I got to where I am, because I am an online coach, and I got here in a very atypical way. For a lot of people, they're like fitness, health, this is what I love, this is what I'm going to do. That's not how this started for me at all. So how this started was I was, as I said, so it kind of links into what we've been talking about actually. I needed to be the best at everything. I needed to prove my worth. So I was like, right, I need to go to college and do a really good degree, because if I, study and become a doctor, won't that be amazing? And won't everybody think I'm great? And then maybe I will think I'm great, So this external validation thing. So got really good grades in my leaving cert, was studying neuroscience in UCD, so one of the top colleges in Ireland. And the goal was always to be a doctor. So most of the people in my year in my course went on to become medical doctors. So that was always the goal. And in my final year of studying neuroscience, I went to Africa to study or to help build houses for orphaned kids over there. One of the best summers of my life. I actually went back after that. But anyway, it's the final year of college. Me and my cousin went over. We were building houses for kids over there. And one of the days, the organizer asked me to go down to the local school to teach the kids a little bit of English. And I was like, yeah, happy days. Went down, was in the class, just had the best day ever. And it was like a light bulb moment. I always say it was the first pivotal moment of my career. I was like, shit, I love doing this. Like, I think I want to actually teach, right? So I came home, I applied for the HTIP, which is a teaching qualification in Ireland. I finished out my degree. So I actually am a qualified neuroscientist, but I went on to get my teaching degree. I did that, and I started teaching in secondary schools. And as I said earlier, I think I was a secondary school teacher for about 8 years.
Hmm.
And I really did love it. Like, I genuinely think, do you know what? Here's a funny story just after popping into my head. When you're qualifying to be a teacher, you have to have supervisions, and like another teacher who has done this for years and years sits in on your lessons and grades you and stuff. And
Hmm.
I remember I had the like head of the college sit in on mine. So everyone was like, oh, whoever gets that person, they're so unlucky. And it was fucking me. And I was like, shit. Anyway, she sat in on like 5 of my teaching lessons, and I'll never forget it. You get feedback and you get graded and stuff. And she sat down with me and she said, Kelly, you were born to teach. I got the highest grade in my teaching qualification. And I knew I was. Do you know what I mean? Do you know when something's just
Hmm.
so in line with who you are that you know that this is what you're meant to do? So I loved teaching. I never ever hated teaching, right? But I hated what I was teaching at the end. And what I mean by that was I was teaching 16, 17-year-old kids to memorize information, to sit down, to regurgitate this information
Hmm.
and probably never use it ever again. So I didn't feel like I was actually impacting somebody's life through what I was teaching. Although I loved my subject area, I was teaching science, biology, chemistry, physics, maths. I love all of that. I'm an absolute nerd at heart, right? So I loved what I was teaching, but I didn't love, the fact that this wasn't helping people, I suppose, in a deeper
Yeah.
way. So in the background, so I was teaching, but in the background, I was doing all of those crazy things that I was telling you earlier. I was playing rugby, I was competing in Ironman, I was competing in MMA. So I always had a love of, the human body, performance, fueling my own performance. And I was like, what can I do to marry the two? So I was like, "Do you know what? I can study nutrition and personal training, and I can actually teach people about health and fitness, because I'd been through my own transformation. I struggled with weight myself.
Hmm.
I'd come out the other side and I was doing all these crazy things. So I studied personal training and nutrition on the side my very last year of teaching. And I always think this is a really important point to make when I'm chatting. I was working as a teacher 5 days a week, and I was studying personal training and nutrition Saturday and Sunday. So I was like flat to the mat for 7 days a week for about a year. And I think that's really important to realize, because when people say, Kelly, you're very lucky to be where you are or whatever, there's no such thing as luck, right? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And I fucking worked my arse off. So anyway, in my final year of teaching, my plan was always to stay teaching, but build up a clientele on the side as a side hustle. But then COVID hit and I just took the jump. I was like, fuck
Yeah.
this, I'm going to go all in. And I rang up the secondary school teacher and I told her I wasn't coming back. So I rang her up during the summer of 2020 and said I won't be back, at the end of August, at the start of September. And it was a massive shock because, again, I
Mm.
was a great teacher in the eyes of everybody else. There was talks on me, climbing that ladder up and up to principal and so on. So, she couldn't believe it. And, I couldn't either, because it was absolutely petrifying. I love the quote, there's only two real addictions in life, heroin and a steady wage. So many people sit in a job that they absolutely hate because of the pension, because of the money coming in. And to be honest with you, there's just stats out there that we spend a third of our life in work. So if you think about it, a third of your life doing something you absolutely hate, like, it's just such a waste. I get it as
Mhm.
well, because it's so scary. But anyway, I made the jump, and yeah, here I am now after years and years of working hard. I remember thinking to myself, I think Mo has a photo of me. She sent it to me a while ago. The first day I was sitting at like my office in my house back then, the first day, and I sellotaped a piece of paper to my desk, and it said, I need X amount of clients a month to cover the rent and food and stuff like that. So I started at absolute zero. I started at
Mhm.
absolute zero, and I've worked my way up to here. But what I'm doing now is my coaching has changed. I think once you get into something and you start doing it, you realize, oh, this is so much deeper than I thought. I started as a weight loss coach, and my goal was to help people lose weight. And it's so much more than that. People come to me to lose weight because that's what they see online, and they absolutely do lose weight, but they lose weight as a byproduct of actually sorting their shit out. And, the feedback I get from clients is just incredible. Like, I even posted a post yesterday about, people who work with me are like, okay, I came to you for weight loss, but I've actually changed my life. Now, I'm not coming from this at an egotistical point of view, like I changed their life. I absolutely didn't. They did it. I gave them the information,
The awareness.
the awareness to do it, and then they decide whether they want to do it or not. But yeah, that's how I got to where I am today, I
Yeah, and
suppose.
we've just done a full circle, so all makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do you know what? I am currently training to be a level 3 personal trainer and a mental health exercise coach because
Wow.
I want to help women who have been through trauma work through their trauma through movement because the only thing, like I said, food was my emotional kind of numbness. Exercise was the only thing that got me through. Now I've got, if you look back at my photographs, every single picture that is of me when I'm 40 kilos heavier, I'm still exercising. That's the only photographs you'll see of me. I'm deadlifting. I'm running a park run. I know that, like you, I know that there is something inside me that makes me want to help other people. Is passion. I want to give that passion to them to know that they themselves can heal themselves and move their way through it. And if you go to your podcast, you can kind of like see the evolution of what it's been, and which is absolutely beautiful and empowering for anybody that does follow that journey, not through the podcast, through your stories. Like it's a revelation because it is not overnight. It is an evolution of change. And like you say, through awareness, like awareness is bloody crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love to hear that you can see that evolution because as I said, it was very much I'm an online coach helping you to lose weight. That is my purpose here to fast forward 5 years. And it's weight loss is a byproduct of the work that I do. It's not, yeah, and also the message that you send out to people attracts the right people as well. Because let's be honest, right? This is a harsh fucking truth. So many people are not in a position where they're willing to do the work to change. And I mentioned it earlier, like I get it as well. It's easier to follow methods and to be told what to do. And, that black and white thinking is really, a lot of people gravitate towards that because it's easy to follow a plan. Like it's being told what to do. It's so much more difficult to actually do the messy work that is necessary for real lifelong change. So I feel like as my message has evolved, also the people that I'm working with, I'm getting people who are more aligned with my values now to work with, whereas,
Yeah.
and come here, if anyone's listening to this and they're trying to build a business, I'm not saying, you know, don't work with people because at the start you have to work with absolutely everybody. That's what I had to do to where I get to where I am today. But I actually genuinely won't work with certain people now because if I feel they're in a position where they're like, they just want to get results and they just want to follow a plan, they just want to be strict. I'm just like, I am not the best person for you to work with, So I'm at that position now. But you also mentioned, actually, I just wanted to circle back there. You mentioned something really, really vital. And you were saying there that exercise, was your thing and it's the only thing that got you through. People need to realize that physical health and mental health are correlated. Mental health needs physical support, If you're not moving your body, if you're not getting those endorphins, it's not going to help you, in terms of your mental health at all. And I would absolutely agree with that, with what you said. And still to this day, my mental health is, I suppose how I manage that first and foremost is through exercise. If I don't, and I'm not talking about, you don't have to go out and run Ironmans, I'm not talking about that. If I don't get out for a walk every single day in the fresh air, I'm not talking about walking paths, I'm not talking about in a gym, also in nature, whether it's
Yeah.
raining. We live in Ireland, lads, we live in the UK, it's going to rain, accept it, get yourself a good jacket. Do you know what I mean? If I don't get out for a walk every single day, I know I'm not going to be a good mother, a good partner, or a good, as best as I can be at my job. We are human beings. We are not supposed to sit indoors for 24 hours staring at a screen. This is what is causing so much problems with our mental health, on top of all of the other shit that we have to deal with. Get outside and move your body. Another thing, and I know I'm going to say this because I am a nutritionist, but this is fact. It's not fiction here. It's not anecdotal, even though it is as well. Fuel your body well, feel well, fuel your body with shit and feel like shit. People are eating nothing but shit. They're indoors 24 hours a day. They're not moving their body and they're wondering why they feel like shit, you know? Yes, we have traumas that we have to deal with, but there are ways or there are things that we can do right now to make us feel a little bit better. I'm not talking about fixing. Don't even know if we can be fixed. We can get better and we can keep going down that road where a lot of people are doing things that aren't making themselves any better.
Yeah, and I totally agree because I did this PTSD like course last year, and there were eight women, and it was all to do with sexual violence basically. And there are three women I think on there that they were like, no, I can't go to the gym, I can't do that. I went, but you can walk outside. Literally, you can going out is not there's no weights involved, there's no money involved, there's literally you don't even need to put headphones in. You can just go out in the fresh air. And it's if you live in the city, yeah, it might be a little bit more difficult to be in a green area, but there are parks everywhere. Like even if you did 2 laps of the park, you're still outside. And yeah, I think it's no matter what we need to face in life, getting movement in and eating well. And I know, I've been there. I've having the chocolate, having the crisp. When you're feeling shitty, you just what you literally fuel yourself with shit. But you need to flip it on its head because actually, I know myself. If I have a really nutritious, healthy meal and I go for a walk, it may not even be that day, but the next day I'll wake up feeling so much better. Whereas if I've been sat on my arse all day and I've been eating shit, the next day I like have a hangover from that. It's not nice. I know that there's going to be so many people that can relate to that.
Yeah, but you know, Lydia, the thing is, and this is where the harsh truths come into it. Those choices are the harder choices. You know, so those people like can't exercise or whatever. It's like you can get out and walk, but that choice to do that is not going to be easy. Like it's so much easier to sit on the couch and watch Netflix. So it's saying to yourself, because I think a lot of people think that health and fitness people online and who do it as a job, they find it easy. It's not instant gratification. So you know, watching Netflix instead of the walk, getting the takeaway instead of making the meal, instant gratification. You know, we're all addicted to that and we're all addicted to these instant dopamine hits. So it's so hard to actually, you know, say, no, I'm actually going to take the harder road because it's actually what I need most. But the
Mhm.
thing about it is, and this is what I always preach online, the thing about it is once you start, so the most difficult point is the starting bit where you haven't done this for years and you're in a bad position. It's going to be so hard to go against. Like people come to me and say, "Oh, Kelly, like I'm having sugar cravings. Not that we cut out sugar or whatever, but I'm having sugar cravings." And I'm like, "Of course, you've given yourself endless amounts of sugar for the
Mhm.
last 20 years. Of course." You get a drug addict, you get an alcoholic and take them off the substance, they're going to want it, you know? So realizing that the start is the hardest part, but this is the goal. It gets easier every single time you do it because you get better. Think about learning how to drive a car. At the start, you're like, what do you mean I have to press the clutch and I have to look in the mirror and I have to do this, that, and the other? Now you drive to work and you don't even remember how you got there because it's so second nature to you. So it's so hard to start. Even this healing journey, even me, like I going to therapy and talking about this and doing things I know I need to help me. At the start, it was fucking awful. But
Mhm.
now it is easier because I'm better at doing it, you know?
I think the car analogy is actually really important because that is, I think anyone that drives, obviously, or is learning to drive can understand that you've got 55,000 things that you are thinking about. And it is the same with nutrition and food and mindset. And like people say, gratitude and manifestation, all these things. But actually, if you don't start, it's never going to happen. Like today is not one day, today is day one. Like today is the day to do it. Like if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, I can do that, get your trainers on, get your boots on, and literally go outside for a 20-minute walk. Like you have to take the step, I think.
Yeah, and there's always going to be a reason not to. Like, I'm going to go to the gym after this podcast, but I could sit here and I could come up with 100 valid excuses as to why I shouldn't. So just get out of your own way, get out of your own head because your head will come up with 1,000 excuses as, you know, why you shouldn't do this. Just get
Mm.
out and do it. Just get out and do it. And I find as well, last thing I'll say about this, I find that in the morning, right, is the best time to exercise because it sets those endorphins, it sets you up for the day. It has a positive knock on effect for the entire day. You know, better food choices, better mood. Better mood means more productivity in work. Better mood means better relationships. It's just, yeah, it's it's the best tool for mental health. It's free and so many people don't use it.
I am in total agreement. I absolutely love getting up and getting out in the morning. Like it's my thing. We are recording this in November and I'm not going live till January. You've just said you're going to the gym. I am going out in nature and I'm going foraging for a Christmas wreath. Just talking with you now is like even validated that I need to get outside even more. Okay, I think there's so much that my listeners will be able to get from you. What I've started to do at the end of my episode is I'm asking people what I'm calling the conductor's question. You have to bring it back to trains in some way, shape, or form. My question to you,
I love that.
it's just a bit strange, but I thought it was like riding the trauma train. We have to have something that
Yes, I
comes
love it.
back to it in the end. Kelly has been on a very emotional journey. If you could sit next to the Kelly that had just jumped onto the trauma train when she first found Mark and had started pushing away those feelings, what would you say to her today?
I would say 3 words. I would say, "You are enough."
Oh, I just got goosebumps.
And I think everyone needs to say that to themselves because no matter what you're doing, no matter your circumstances, no matter where, as I said, where you live, who you are, you're enough. But your own mind and the pressures from society will make you believe that you're not enough. But you've always been enough. And yes, you can do X, Y, and Z to further your career, make you happy. But none of that matters because you've always been enough. And I've done a lot of work on that kind of going back to your child self. Um, and it's eye opening because I mentioned it at the start of this podcast, but I never realized I said 19 years of age, I was only a child.
Hmm.
And I think if one of my girls was to go through that as a child, like, my God, that is so difficult. But I never gave myself any credit for that. I was just like, so yeah, to answer your question, I would say you are enough.
That's beautiful. You've just said something else that is just like resonated with me when you said if your girls went through what you went through at 19, you would just be absolutely beside yourself. But I think we look back at stuff that happens to us through adult eyes. We don't look at it from a 19-year-old's perspective, or in my mind as a child, we don't look at those things that we went through in that moment. We look back at it through now. And that's what's really scary.
Yeah, I mean, if that happened to my girls, I would be absolutely heartbroken for them. I would be heartbroken for them. And yet I gave myself such a hard time because it
Hmm.
happened to me. I was on a podcast before, and the guy I was chatting to, he's actually a good friend of mine. He said, we all use this term, it was only me, or I was only, and that will keep you stuck for your whole life because you are a human being. You have feelings like everybody else. You aren't different. You aren't special. And I love that because that means that you can give yourself a bit of fucking credit for what you've been through, Think about this. If anybody was to sit beside you on that train, right, and tell you what they've been through and it was a direct reflection of your life, you'd be fucking horrified, but you give yourself a tough time. Mental. We're our own worst critics and we're everybody else's biggest cheerleaders. And we need to start flipping that.
Yeah, that was absolutely beautiful. That's all I can say about that comment. And I'm using that as a tagline.
I love it.
Okay, so I think that we could wrap up now. It's absolutely been an absolute pleasure having you here. And how can people get hold of you if they would like to work with you, Kelly Fennell, not Fennell, as I thought it was. Um, Kelly Fennell Fitness. Listen to your podcast. Do you want to give a little shout out for your links, etc.?
Yeah. So first of all, my name is spelled Kellie. Um, Not the usual way, but everything online. If you search Kellie Fennell Fitness, I'm most active on Instagram, but I'm on Facebook and TikTok and stuff like that. And then, yeah, the podcast would probably be a great starting point. It's called the Kellie Fennell podcast, very original. But I think once you start listening to that, I feel like you'll start to understand me more as a person. And then, like I would always say to people, if they want to work with me, listen to my stuff first, because, you know, you want to know, like, and trust someone before you start working with them. So yeah, Kellie Fennell Fitness, type it into the Google and you'll find me.
Amazing. I would also like to give a little shout out because with your podcast, obviously that's how I say I met you, but that's how I found you. And I've literally listed my favorite ones that I have listened to and that I have gone back to because there are sometimes that I need that extra boost, and they have been influential in my every day, every week's. I'm just going to list them now. So, earn your seat at the table. Only you can give yourself what you want. The thing itself was never what you wanted. That one's amazing. Delayed gratification, which is another one that we've spoken about today. Non-negotiables, systems over willpower, no plan B. Your self-worth is not found in the minds of other people, and self-limiting beliefs. Now, all of those I've listened to at least twice. I love the fact that all of those different episodes we've spoke about in some way, shape or form today. It just goes to show how much all of us need that reiterated in our lives. And working with someone like you and listening to what you do is going to help make other people become aware of what they need to do to move forward. I am so grateful and so happy that you're here. And if anybody has got any comments and wants to like, subscribe or share, it's at Riding the Trauma Train on Instagram, and comment below. So thank you so much and take care. Thank you so much for joining me today on Riding the Trauma Train. I'm Lydia and I feel privileged to share this space with you. No matter where you are on this train right now, whether it's in survival mode, slowly finding your feet in recovery, or maybe it's somewhere in between, remember you are not alone in what you're feeling and you do not have to travel this journey by yourself. So if you'd like to continue traveling together, please follow Riding the Trauma Train wherever you're listening so you can join us at the next stop. Until next time, take care.